Well, welcome to another edition of the Pure Signal podcast here on the road. And myself, Ryan Medellin, joined by, as always, by my co-host, our North America CEO, Kevin Erickson. And Kevin, I think we've got our white whale as we look towards guests. This is somebody we've been chasing down for a long time to try and get him on the podcast. We had to meet him where he is. We hit the road and said, Todd, we will be there to get this interview because we've been waiting for this for a long time. So first off, Todd Schwarz, our global digital platform lead, thank you so much for joining us. And how's your week been? It's coming off of Adobe Summit. I know it's been chaotic. There's been a lot of meetings, a lot of boots on the ground efforts. First off, I'd love for you to give an introduction of who you are and what you do, and then let's get into how the last couple of weeks have been.
Awesome. Thank you, Ryan. I appreciate it. It's an honor to be on the podcast here. Honor to be with you both. Todd Schwarz. I am our sort of global delivery lead and digital platform lead here at Credera, and excited to be at and coming off of Adobe Summit. It's probably my 20th plus Adobe Summit, which probably, outlasts several people at Adobe itself. But I think more importantly, it's just exciting to be around, just this collection of amazing, talented people in the marketing technology space, right? And the discussions that happen, not just in sessions, not just in some of the keynotes, but really all around it. And I think it's one of those, and it's an early event of the year, but it's one of those where I think you get excited to talk to and get excited to see some of the amazing talent that this event brings.
A couple episodes ago, Kevin, Jake, and myself discussed, when it comes to conference season, there's a lot of momentum going into them. You feel like you could fly when you're in the moment and you're hearing all these cool things and having all these great art of possible conversations. And I think one of the things that we really honed in on, and I would love to get your perspective on this, Todd, is it's easy to, when you get back from a conference like that, to kind of fall back into your day to day. And, I don't want to say put that stuff away, but kind of becomes like, okay, back to what we're dealing with today. How do you balance, in your perspective, being 20 plus years of Adobe Summits, what is your strategy for making sure that you can keep that momentum coming off of a conference like that and ensure that what you've learned and the takeaways that you've had and the conversations that you had can keep moving forward, even when you get back into your normal day to day?
That's a great question. And I think, it is common for all of us to get back into the daily grind. And how do you take some of the things you hear about here and you talk to, friends and colleagues, but more importantly, customers and brands, right? And I think one of the common sort of follow-ups is, boy, I saw all this amazing new product and all this amazing new features and capabilities and things that it could advance into my own ecosystem within my own brand and experience. Do I own any of that? Like, how much can I use of that? And I think sometimes there's that mystery between what you see on stage and a little bit of like what you already have access to. And so I think some of the follow-up is first demystifying, like, let's break down what you actually have, how much is what's in the roadmap of coming. And then, you hear people talk a lot about value realization. And it is one of those things where it's how do we go and get the most out of the investments our clients are making? And then say, yeah, but this feature is coming. So let's prepare ourselves for how we're going to go take advantage of some of that new stuff.
Yeah, that's a great thought, because I think one of the things that you hear all these things out of these conferences, and we've talked, Kevin, of course, a lot at length about what we're seeing so far in Q1 for the year as we wrapped up Q1 and as we head towards Q2. Would love to hear from you. What are the things that you're hearing, not only at the conference that we were at, but as far as what you saw in Q1 and then what, was looking forward to the rest of the year? Like, what are some of the key themes that you're seeing?
There's no doubt, right? The theme of all of these this year is going to be how Agentics sort of fall into the product roadmaps of these marketing technology vendors. And I think customers are certainly at the forefront of saying, hey, how do I take advantage of that? What do I build within, a SaaS-based platform versus what do I do outside of that? I think the fundamental thing that clients truly are struggling with, though, with all of this advancement in marketing technology and certainly AI, is how do I organize my people? How do I get the most out of my operating model, but not just from a roles and responsibilities and a RACI, but like, how do I really organize my teams where if I want to be omni-channel and I want to work omni-channel, then I can't have people that are focused on just one, paid or social channel. I have to really reorganize how I do work. I have to reorganize how I actually spend, day after day after day delivering and meeting the marketing outcomes we want. And I think that's to me, that is a big takeaway. As you learn about all the stuff that came out this week, which was amazing things that are coming, I think at the end of the day, businesses are like, what the hell do I need to do to go make it so that I can go operate against it?
Yeah. Well, Todd, thank you for one being here, but also for bringing a topic that I can actually address or talk about. But even before I go there, I mean, yeah, Todd's been really fun over the last couple of years to get to know you. And one of the things that's, it's not going to embarrass you with just the impact that you had in this field, but it's interesting for two guys that have been in, marketing, technology, consulting for all careers. Like, you really have depth in this. And so I've walked around with you a bunch this week, and it's interesting just to see everywhere we go, you've had generally connections with different people across your career from both, places you've worked at, Adobe, clients, which I think is such a reflection of what you do every day. So I just really appreciate seeing that, and just so thankful for you. Uh, if I were to go a little bit off that color, and I'm saying some of the ways where you and I continue to play, it is interesting around, this year, thinking about the themes, and as we talked about in our previous episodes around conferences, it's a whole bunch of clients and elements, but it's interesting here specifically from a really product perspective. Really, I felt it, not that they're trying to claim ground. It's even kind of a little bit interesting where we're positioned today. We're kind of right in between, Adobe's on the north side of the strip and Google's on the south side of the strip. We're kind of right in between, but it's actually an interesting component of that, because I think Adobe and our customers that at least I were meeting with are really trying to figure out what will be in Adobe, what will be in Google or AWS or in my even own environment. We're trying to help our clients through that. So I think I really love the angle of like, that's going to continue to flush it out. And that's a debate that's been going on for 100 years in technology, who's going to be, where it's going to be. But it is interesting that you can make progress on how you have your org set up for that, which definitely feels different than me from a year ago, where it was more like, this is coming. Well, now it's like, what do I do with it? I don't have a chance. And my suspicion is, even if you were to look across, I don't know, maybe people are out, 20,000 people that are here, maybe less, whatever that is, they're probably a lot more comfortable today in the agentic mindset than they were a year ago. And I think companies are really rapidly moving down that. And it's going to be fascinating to see where that fits. I think with our clients too, really, that's most of the questions that we're asking, whether it be here or elsewhere, is like, what do we want to do? And as a more strategy and process and people side of the organizations are really fun questions to really be asking. How do we amplify? What do we want to do? How do we work through that? What do we change? I found myself 2 different dinners, but really focusing a lot on, it's really around ROI from cost takeout, but also really more offensive ROI, which is very different than some of the conversations I was having throughout the year last year, which I think is really encouraging too, is that people are more willing to think about growth and willing to think about what they do with that.
Yeah, I well said. And I think like years before, but probably more than ever, we've always known technology plays a massive role in marketing. And the pressure on marketers and the pressure on CMO down within marketing to sort of show that ROI and show that impact on sales, show that impact on revenue. It's going to be fueled by technology more than ever before, and that expectation. But then you have this compounding factor of the rate of change, right? So what you and I would maybe hypothesize today on what's going to solve for a brand and a customer experience and the orchestration of that customer experience, it's how do you prepare for that rapid evolution of change? Like what we talked a lot about over the last couple of days, we'll probably talk differently in a year from now. And I think, how do you prepare yourself for taking advantage of what the best of the market has? How do you take a lot of these new capabilities that Adobe presented around brand intelligence, around customer orchestration of the experience at the enterprise level, around some of the things that they have coming out from the Gen Studio for the enterprise perspective? How do you take those, but then maximize the value you want, maximize what you need to do from a business, and show that ROI you need, and do it in a way that's responsible, do it in a way that's cost effective, do it in a way that you don't overtax your people. Yeah.
I would love to talk to you about, based on what you've heard as like real client needs versus what you hear at conferences like that. Are these vendors, are they hitting the marks Or is it more, hey, this is what you need to think about in the future, but then clients are thinking about, well, this is what I have now. This is what I have to work with now. Obviously, you can look forward, when budget's available and opportunity to make massive changes come into play, you can start thinking about that strategically. But I think the big thing for me is like when we go back and we talk to clients what they need now, they're sometimes a few steps behind where the art of possible being talked about at places like this is being the discussion's going.
Yeah, I mean, I think certainly almost every customer brand experience out there is trying to figure out how do I get the most of what I have today. That doesn't mean they're not exploring what's next, but I think they're definitely saying, "Hey, I got to drive impact immediately in an incredibly competitive marketplace." And so I think what we're saying is, what are those, what are those use cases that we need to go and implement and drive value. I also think there's what is that maturity curve where we start to introduce and make the marketing team incredibly more productive and enhance what they do, which is where all of this, human interaction with Agentics comes in. How do we make that marketer just incredibly more productive by bringing things that we can automate for them, bring things where we can bring Agentics into the picture, offset some of that work, allow, whether it's human interacted, whether it's fully autonomous, but how do you take some of those capabilities, whether it's in the platform or next to the platform, but just bring that productivity enhancement and allow the marketers to then say, hey, how do I go and look at other ways to drive market impact and demand segment impact? And, whether you're pushing a product service, whether you're generating leads, whether you're, trying to close the loop on a customer lifetime value circle, it's, what can I take to just boost that productivity? I sort of fall in the camp where I believe as more and more of this AI lives in and outside around these platforms, it's not going to displace jobs. It's actually just going to enhance people's ability to go deliver more and faster and be more productive and give them more opportunities to think, to say, oh my gosh, I've been wanting to do this, but I've just been inundated with daily routine that now I have an opportunity to go and do way more impactful stuff. And so I think how we unlock that for our clients and leverage partners like Adobe and others and Google down the street to do that, I think is part of our responsibility.
I'm glad you brought that up because that's where I was going to go next. And I want to bring you in on this, Kevin, and ask you both this because I think for the business leaders and tech leaders that listen to this podcast, I think they'd be really curious to see how you two operate, right? As leaders of a business and working in various areas. Kevin, as our North American CEO, and then Todd, what you focus on. What is that relationship like between you two? This is a personal curiosity, but I also think it's a very interesting topic to talk about when we talk about all these things that are happening and the fast-paced movement of it all. How do you two collaborate to stay on top of all these things?
You want to start? Go for it.
Yeah, that's a little different question I was thinking, but I think it's one thing that I really, it's just interesting around. I think it make a collaboration and how we work through with different roles that we play. And again, we've done a ton from a client specific perspective together. But I'll just start with this: is that's really, I respect your experience, your craft, your knowledge, and I think that it's a simple thing. But as you in this industry and you're coming up with all these different elements, you're developing relationships fast and working through that. That doesn't always happen, And I just really, I'm always really I genuinely am an optimistic guy in terms of what you meet, how you think through it. But it's really fun. I've mentioned it before. It's fun when you're around someone who's very approachable, which I think Todd's incredibly approachable and humble, but also has this great domain depth. And you don't see it from what he's saying. You see it from the way that people are interacting with him or the conversations you're having with clients, the impact that you're making. And yeah, in a firm that's kind of grown up, boots on the ground and up, it's also cool to see someone who's coming in very earned, but also you've played more recently from an altitude that's probably different than where at least I've played and where Credera's been playing. So I think I really appreciate that. And I don't know if this is a collaboration, but I wanted to add a note that's been really really fun for me the last couple of weeks. I probably said it more than you probably want me to, but we were sitting on a couch similar to this, maybe watching a basketball game, and maybe watching your alma mater play, and what was really fascinating. So it was a Sweet 16 game, and your client was one of the primary advertisers that was also in that game, and it was really fascinating just to watch. You get passion for the game, and then the passion for the ad of like, why are you spending money there? Where is that gonna go? Or that money could have been going to personalization to drive this. And it was like, I am like sitting with just someone who knows his world in a way that I didn't, but yet I love that. So that question actually in that is, one is it was really funny and really cool, but I think it's an interesting question of like, where I think when going back now to how we collaborate from maybe a bit more of a tech perspective, maybe more of a people business perspective, is I do think the question of like where money flows, how that plays into that, where do I invest, what's the power of talent versus getting someone directly, it's a really interesting question of how you're advising CMOs. And we still get paid, a lot of our money gets paid from folks that are more on the system and process and data side, so you got to balance that. But kind of curious where you see that's going.
Yeah, and I appreciate that, and I appreciate the kind comments. I think what energizes me is, I love the fact that when you take the broader altitude of what we as a part of Omnicom the impact we can make on our clients, it's when you combine all of that horsepower of the data that we can get from the media and the activation side, of where then we can take that data signals and how we can apply those data signals right to the end, whether it's a B2C, B2B. I mean, I live in a world where uh, those need to collide more and more, where at the end of the day, I'm a consumer. I could work in an enterprise, and that's a profile of mine. I also have, a family and a home life. That's a profile of mine. But like how you interact with me and the channel that I want to be interacted for, I mean, at the end of the day, and usually I'm giving brands my consent to say, hey, I want you to talk to me this way and in this context. So the ones who are going to win, and what I love about like the strategy that we're putting across Credera and we're putting within Omnicom and part of our whole precision marketing messaging, how we apply that to customers and where I fit in is I love to take those ideas and then truly apply them in delivery and to truly apply them in taking advantage of our technology partners, which is why we're here this week. And how we actually go and then implement those things, instrument those things, and then tie it in with all the incredible offerings, all the incredible assets and accelerators that we've invested in over the years, and we'll continue to invest in. So that I think that's what energizes me. That's what I love about our partnership together, as we're getting these strategic initiatives and these amazing investments, and then how do we then apply that to real life use cases in the field? How do we bring those to our clients? Where I get to go play in my sandbox with clients on some of the actual work that we're going to go and put in production, and honestly, the seeing some of that just go live. Right, the best moment is when the things that you contributed to, you then can actually go and say, hey, actually, those were some of those ideas or stuff that we implemented. Right, and it's not just the tech, but it's also the amazing creative that went into it. It's also all the brand that's went into it. It's also the ad placements and how we placed that and how we took one particular marketing message, but we put it on Meta and we put it on Google Display and we put it on broadcast TV and we put, so it's just how you see those come to life is really special.
Well, one more thing I want to just add to that too. I think it's partly just even going back to the heart of the collaboration, which is interesting, and is at the level that we work, the executives we work with, we think it's really powerful. Todd, about what you bring on a day-to-day basis. That's what you said. You go tell them, tie back how you introduce yourself, which was 3 or 4 different titles and roles that you have, which are all really true in terms of what you do. But then, it goes and then back to who you meet with. But I think it is interesting. You are passionate about the actual solution and the delivery. You're passionate about the teams that it takes to do that, the learning. And I also think that is uncommon. I think that's a bit of what Credera is trying to play in this ecosystem of marketing and advertising too, is that, it's not just about the story. It's not just about what we're trying to do. It's really around, if you don't tie back to actual results, which again, I think is interesting for somebody who's come more from either strategy or more of kind of the maybe the tech solution inside of it up, and where marketing's been always a great place to play. But the classical stereotype of a bit squishy, and it's actually fun now, I think, to have marketing professionals who still have to consider about brand and story and all those components, but yet the access to the tools, whether it be human capital systems, agentic, is really at their fingerprints in ways that are very different. And I think it's going to be the organizations that evolve to the world where, going back to the, the advertising, it's not about the advertisement anymore. It's not about the, that. And I'm overly simplifying it, but it's really, again, no, I'm going to be measured about, I want to sell more cars. I want to drive this experience. I want to drive this. I want to be able to know what profile I'm talking to them, and how do I be able to reach that person in ways that aren't creepy, or whatever that might look like, again, stereotypically. But it's really fascinating. I'm intrigued to see, again, our ecosystem of clients that we talk about, which organizations, which actual individuals, regardless of what their title is, are embracing this versus which ones are still maybe holding on to what was something that probably they spent the bulk of their career getting that made them successful. Now is radically different on how they're approaching their team structure and what they're being measured on.
Yeah. And I think the brands and the customer experiences and the businesses that are going to win are the ones who are going to be laser focused on that customer experience. They're going to be laser focused on meeting the customer, in the moment that matters, in the context that matters, at the time that matters. But then how they do that, where they take advantage of some of this amazing things like Adobe announced this week around their co-work, right? I mean, it's now, I don't want to say table stakes, but everyone's sort of got this co-pilot, co-work sort of enhancement to their platform. And I think, as a marketer, if you're not thinking about taking advantage of that, I think you're going to be behind.
Yeah. First off, y'all are doing an excellent job, because you're steering the conversation right where I was wanting to go as we approach the midway point here. But I hear a lot about,
You're right.
yeah, right. It's the genius behind my genius. So it's just like, we'll get you.
This is why you're a veteran.
Yeah, exactly, right. But I hear a lot about customer experience and brand and reputation and all these things that you're talking about. But then I'm also hearing like this massive orchestration effort where there is a lot happening, not only from a CMO standpoint, but from a technology standpoint, where any small moment can be lost in translation of trying to build that authenticity that a brand seeks to have. And I feel like maybe over the last 10 years or so, as things really got into moving online, everything online, and that's how brands were interacting with people, with some of these tools and some of this agentic capabilities. We always talk about the people element of this may give brands an opportunity, when done the right way, to I don't want to say rebuild the authenticity, but establish a new sort of authenticity they have with their consumers. I know this is something that you focus on as well, is like, how do we utilize all this technology and do these really cool things, but still stay authentic? And it seems like it's that personal one-to-one touch in the moments that matter.
Yeah, and I appreciate your comment. Right, I fall in that end of the spectrum where I prefer to have as much personalization as possible when I give consent. Like, I want you to know what my favorite music is. I want you to know my favorite artists, or I want you to know what my favorite, food types are, whatever it may be, without being too creepy, right? So, I think, to your point, you have this amazing amount of technologies out there for us to go and really drive that level of personalization, whether it's all the way to that one-to-one, or whether you do it from a persona level. I think there's a rhyme and reason for how you take advantage of both of those. But what comes with that is the other end, which is all of the data, security, performance, scalability. And what I love about what we have and what we've built here within Credera and Omnicom is we really look at it from all the lenses. Like, just as much as we're helping drive and working with our creative and our brand teams and our media teams and everyone who's putting out amazing content and creative storytelling and amazing art, if you think about it, that we're putting out there. At the same time, we're also helping harden that so that you don't have the data risks, you don't have the security holes, you don't have the potential performance challenges that go with all of that. So I often, when I'm coaching clients, I'm also saying, hey, we can introduce these capabilities, but we got to make sure we're doing it in a way that's performance, reliable, safety, and within and also within brand.
You must be a veteran at this as well, because you again kind of hinted on where I was going to go next. Is when you start to engage with our clients or clients that you're meeting with, what do those initial conversations sound like? And I think you hinted on it a little bit there of, hey, before we go down this road, I need you to understand these things, and this is what you really need to be caring about outside of like all the cool stuff that we'll eventually do. But at its core, at its foundation, like we need to establish a baseline of like what we need to really make sure we get right.
Yeah, and I think it certainly depends on the outcomes we're trying to drive towards, but at the end of the day, it's usually tied to some business outcome. And then as we pull back from the business outcome, we look deep inside. All right, well, what is it going to take to implement that use case, or what is it going to take to drive that sort of impact we want in the business? And then you start pulling back. All right, well, there's the people side, there's the business process side, and then of course there's the tech side. And the tech side just isn't around turning on that new feature or enabling that that new last mile assembly of content and assets and so forth to give the most beautiful offer, the beautiful campaign, or beautiful imagery to someone, or beautiful offer from a next best action. But it's also, but how do we do it in a safe, reliable, secure way that we have people's personal data, we have their customer data. How are we protecting that? How do we give them access to that? Did we ask for their consent? And then do we understand what they told us so that we're tracking all that, storing all that, and then truly responding to them over those channels? All of that to me is important. And I think all of that also sort of, and you didn't mention this, but I would also, it means you have to build relationships up with those third-party technology vendors too, because you are naturally having, as a consumer, I'm trusting that as I talk to you over these other channels, you're also helping control the message. You're also helping control, your brand across those channels. And we know every brand is trying to manage that. Like, how do I control my experience when it's not my own experience? And so I like the fact that we are helping lots of customers solve that today, especially in large language models, especially in, some of the walled gardens that are out there today.
Well, I'm gonna see if we can surprise Ryan and maybe go a different direction, because
I don't think we can. I don't know if we can.
Well, we'll see. We'll see.
Y'all do whatever you want.
Yeah, no, that's gonna go.
I'm just the voice here.
It's gonna go to Todd. But like, I'm curious now. I'm gonna take a different part, go back to a different part of your role, which really is around this. You've spent the bulk of your career doing, either your own building your own tools, hands and keyboard, but most recently, like really global delivery, really how you get the efficiency. You're passionate around really creating amazing employee experiences across the world, and how that dives back into then also how we just solve client problems. So I'm curious now, in a world as you're thinking again, how do we continue to take advantage of global scale, global skill sets, create pockets of excellence around the world. Now with the fact that we've got a bit of a competing element now, which is going to be this agentic component like this, some of the things that potentially would have done. So I'm curious, not from a defensive or a negative, but actually going back to where you said, where I also believe that this is going to create tons of jobs and opportunities for people. I'm just curious how you think about seeing this as you're thinking about global solutions, pockets of skill sets. How does this play into a world where everyone's mashing up into what is human capital driven, what is system driven, what's automatic, what's self-learning? Give you a lot of different things, threads to pull on there, but curious in your thoughts on that.
Yeah. It's and I'm by far not the only person thinking about this, right? I think we all are, and I think everyone in the industry, regardless of where you fall, is certainly trying to solve this equation, right? As we and how you partner with some of the more advanced AI leading companies out there, pick your flavor, who's coming out with massive models, or who's coming out with, even niche models, whatever it may be. But I think there's I think once you have to have a sense of curiosity. I think it starts there. I think it starts with a culture of curiosity where you're, willing to go try things. And again, in a very responsible way. You'll hear that repeated theme from me, but I think, where, there are, bad characters out there in the world, and you got to make sure that you are not introducing that to within your own enterprise or any of your clients' enterprises, for sure. I also think you have to empower your people with the right sets of tools. And we heard a lot of the keynotes. If you were in the keynotes this week at Adobe Summit, you heard Jensen from NVIDIA talk about it. You heard Dick's Sporting Goods talk about it, where, how do you give folks the tools? And, you can relate that to really any profession. I mean, but how do you give those folks tools and then allow them to use those tools? And, whether you want to, pick your flavor, whether it's Claude Code, whether it's NeoClaw as a sort of environment, whether it's, OpenClaw, but how do you then take that culture of curiosity and then allow them to take some risks, allow them to go and explore and fail fast, as we've often talked about over the last 20 years. But then also, truly drive impact. I think that to me is how I'm thinking about it from a global delivery. And that's how I think we're coaching our clients and working with them. And I think the more you can do that at scale around the globe, the more, again, those I think are the teams that are going to win. And I think that's the way you organize your pods, the way you organize, in sit shoulder to shoulder with your clients, whether it's virtually or physically, but, meet them where they are, and really drive together. I think that's most important.
Well, since we're using our using curiosity and also add boldness into this as well, as we're talking about, partly just because I think one thing that's interesting, we've had different themes across the year, but it's just more about broader, is that I do think that there is an opportunity for what was different constructs of what you expect to get from teams, technology, departments, and the whole structure. You can reinvent yourself. And so, so again, learning all those elements, but I also think you have to be able to, really maybe building on the fail fast. You have to be bold. You got to make a decision. You got to work through this. It's an opportunity for companies to think about. I can think about my, for lack of buzzword or a buzzword, center of excellence differently. I can think about what I do and where I do it differently. I think it's a great opportunity for people to level up, because as you continue to have a lot of the base level tasks continue to be done in different means, it's really exciting. And I hope that different elements of the value chain for the people, teams, the way we deal with clients, you can just do it differently, and which is going to require not only how groups of people change up and down through that process, and I'm not even just talking about geographic differences, but just even where things. I had one of my dinner conversations this week was a classical shadow IT. Well, what the heck is shadow IT in a world right now where every single person's enabled in a way that is just different? And then if you think about it, they were coming from a particular enterprise data perspective, and so that was the rationale. And I'm like, that's a huge challenge right now. It's almost like, the sense of having the foundational data, but I mean, there's no genie getting. You're not pulling back the shadow IT genie in the bag right now with the way models are working and the way people are working, everything between personal devices, phones, everything else. And so you're going to have a strategy that encompasses that and protect yourself and the company and things like that. But it's just fascinating where the more you lean into it, the more you say, this is where we're going. Even the momentum, I think, over the last 12 months, and which is then it also ties us back to, I still wonder, what are the frameworks that companies are going to hang from? Is it going to be, think about, I thought it was fascinating a bit that Jensen was the keynote speaker at a SaaS. I'm like, well, am I keeping my friends closer? I mean, I didn't know exactly how to look at that one. It's like, and I didn't go, I didn't have a chance to hear him. I was at a side of conflict, but I was fascinated, interesting, he's everywhere, but also it's kind of an intriguing play with Adobe and how they try to blend into that.
Yeah, I mean, don't quote me on stats here, but I mean, I think what is interesting about today's day and age is almost everyone is a coder, right? And so, with the enablement of these tools, I mean, the again, don't quote me here, but there was a steady decline on the number of submissions to the Apple App Store and the Google Play Store for 5 to 6 straight years, and then all of a sudden they've had more submissions than ever before because of the availability of these tools. GitHub has had more people, use GitHub exponentially. In fact, GitHub has been sort of struggling to sort of keep some of the performance out there. I think they've done an amazing job, so I'm not here criticizing GitHub. In fact, as a huge fan, but just the sheer amount of people who are now on GitHub because the amount of people who can code, and it's not going away. And I would, again, in the culture of curiosity, which is what I advocate across all our businesses, and giving people a little bit of space. But if you're not in that playground today, you should try it. Like it's you know, whether you want to go leverage something like a Lovable or whether you want to go, you know, use Claude Code yourself. Honestly, there's no limit. Like, you know, sky's the limit in my book of what people can do. And I think, you know, you're just going to see this massive advancement in really next generation customer experiences and next generation type of way to engage with brands. And I think it's largely due to, you know, the accessibleness of actually writing and building code and the productivity you can get out there.
Want to bring you both down to my level here for just a minute as a manager working his way up the corporate ladder and hoping to one day be a future business leader. But you know, I think one of the things that I always like to think about when we talk about these things and in like all of this change that's happening and how fast it's happening, and we've talked about this before, but Todd, I know you have a lot of experience in leading large teams. You know, how from your eyes, when things are changing as fast as they are today, and you have these conversations happening at the C-suite level and the digital leads and the data leads and the tech leads, and you know, what's kind of that, how do you bridge the gap between those conversations when you say, okay, here's what we need to do, here's the plan, but then that has to be communicated to the organization, right? There has to be some sort of plan that gets put into place for these teams that are going to be, you know, not, I don't want to say affected in a negative way, but going to be it's going to be part of their lives now. That's going to be part of their day to day. They're going to be working towards this. What in your mind is the best way to approach that from kind of the, okay, we've had the conversations, now we're going to start doing some of these things. How do we effectively communicate that to the folks that are going to be in it every single day?
It's a great question. And I, you know, listen, I've been very blessed at the places I've worked and the brands I've gotten to work on, and I've been blessed by the people around me and who have coached me. And I think at the end of the day, you know, we're all people and we're all in a people business. And I think, you know, the way I look at the work is you treat everyone the same. And there is this tightrope that you walk around how you balance the fact that we are in, you know, a society and a, you know, business economics where we have to deliver and we have to go and drive the best performance we can for our clients. And but that same token, you got to go and do that in a way that you encourage people. You got to do that in a way where you allow people to take some risks. You allow people to go stretch their skills. You know, I'm a firm believer in, you know, maybe I'm just the ultimate optimist, but I think people will constantly surprise you. And I think, you know, giving people an opportunity to go and stretch and try things. I have really, you know, built my career because and really my success is because the people I've had around me. If it wasn't for those people, I certainly wouldn't be where I am today, and I certainly wouldn't have the pedigree I have. And so I know I'm taking sort of an inward view on this, Ryan, so I apologize, but
No, this is fantastic.
but flipping it to, you know, certainly how we impact clients' businesses, when you get the most out of your team, and then that becomes infectious, right? That just becomes viral across how, and then all of a sudden that ends up showing results for customers and they see it, you know, and then I think it becomes a little bit infectious in our clients, and then our clients are like, hey, I want to work with these people. I like them. I want to be with them. And let's face it, your work family, we spend a lot of time together. A lot of time, right? And so it's really important to you know, surround your people who are positive and like-minded, and the same goes for our customers. Everyone wants to do good things, and so you know, and how we I believe that certainly we're in the business of risk, but I think we're also in the business of helping our clients succeed. And so when they see that positivity out there and they see the outcomes, it just becomes and I think that's a reflection of, Kevin, the business you lead for us, where if you look at our reoccurring sort of clients, it's pretty amazing. And I think, you know, that's a reflection of your leadership. I think that's a reflection of how you run our business. I think it's a reflection of how we look at the various markets we have. And I think year over year we have repeat customers, and it's because I mean, yeah, we do good work, but I also think it's because we're fun to work with.
Yeah. Well, I think too, like off of that, I think first off, great answer. But secondly, you know, in my experience, and when we talk about how this technology will enable more time for people to focus on the things that maybe they want to focus on more than they are now. Um, when you have a good people connection, whether it's with a client or internal, yeah, I agree. It's completely infectious. And I think for me, you know, when I work with somebody that I really enjoy working with, I look forward to that. Right. And, you know, like you mentioned, we probably spend more time with our coworkers than we do our actual families, whether we want to admit it or not. We go on trips with them, we meet people on trips within clients. And yeah, I think, you know, that is such a huge part of it that it's really nice to see a lot of companies really kind of focusing on that. Right. It's in this world of AI is going to take everyone's jobs. People are really starting to think about, well, what's the people element here and how can we enable our people more so now that they have technology to help maybe do some of those things that they were doing in the past that was taking up a lot of their time. I think that's a big part of it too, of not the sell, but like the story that you can tell your folks is like, you're going to have more opportunities for connection, more opportunities for relationships to build based off of what we're trying to do.
Yeah. And you know, we have a little bit of an internal family debate. Is I'm obviously a huge advocate for the advancement of AI and certainly the build out of data centers and all this stuff. And then, you know, we have a lot of family debate about like, so how does that balance sustainability and how does that balance, you know, what we're trying to do, you know, as people in this world, you know, I think the way we treat people, we also have to think about how we're treating sort of our environment and the people around and where we live. So it's certainly a tightrope for us, you know, in my family, and I think it's a tightrope for all of these, you know, all of us in the business world. But I'd like to believe that there's a happy medium for us on how we go and, you know, walk that appropriately, walk that responsibly, and you know, again, you know, just help businesses sort of meet the customer experiences they need and meet customers with what they want. So it's the most enjoyable experiences out there.
Sure. A couple minutes left. I would love the opportunity for some final thoughts. So Kevin, I don't know if you want to start or Todd, but I think just overall, I would love to hear, you know, obviously coming off of Adobe Summit, how you all are feeling as leaders within the business, or what you're excited about and maybe what you're looking forward to.
Well, yeah, I must start just first of all, I mean, being in Vegas on the strip, there's not a more sustainable place in anywhere that we're at. I mean, you can just see how much they care about power consumption and around. Yeah, but yeah, yeah. Um, you know, I think I don't have insights. Maybe it's a long couple of days, but it's really been fun. But I think one thing I want to add to your list of things, Todd, that I think that struck me was around, you know, who we work with, how we work through it, clients, internal friends, whatever else. But it's around people who are willing to learn, people that are willing to teach. That's one of the things, again, I love about what we do. It's I very much believe and have chosen to spend most of my career in a human capital world that's being powered by modern technology and different themes. But it's really around, I think that's one of the wonderful things around right now is that, you know, it's like if you're willing to, how you learn, how you incorporate, how you change, how you play through that. And, you know, we're similar career arc and experiences in terms of age, and, you know, roughly been through 3 or 4 different technical changes that have impacted clients over the last 30 plus years. It's just really fun. And again, I think it's going to be so much more change. I think we'll probably see more change on how we do think, how clients work, how society works, what opportunity that creates for all of society, and some of the themes, more larger important themes that you were just discussing, maybe in the last quarter of my career than I did in the previous 3 quarters, which I think is really fascinating because that's been a really fun, you know, first arc of sorts. And I think that's where, which is also then interesting around when you have also very, very smart, intelligent people that are talking about, at one of my other dinners this week, where they had just sent out a weekend with his executive team out in Silicon Valley, where people are really like, there's going to be 30, 40, 50% unemployment. I mean, like, you have real hard and like that stark differences between like this have and have nots. I mean, these are really smart people. Think that, you know, you see that in different places where you've had global scale. Also, people being like, "Oh my goodness," and it could be really catastrophic. And so, I think we're gonna as a society, and then also us in our roles, just in business, we're gonna have to live through this tension a bit. Yes, optimism is, I think, a huge part of it. Curiosity, thinking, and I think that will go. And I fully believe that history suggests that you continue to find ways to expand. But there is maybe more so, at least in my history of like working and even studying back, there is general belief of almost extinction level type thinking that could happen based on what we're seeing. And then, lastly, on the sustainability side, I'll just say that how we handle and manage the power consumption required to be able to do this is going to be a big story of the next season of our society, right? I mean, that's going to drive, and really when it comes, what is allowed to flow, what is the trade-off decisions, there's 1,000 different ways that this could go and flow. Businesses, particularly, they're going to continue to march towards growth and working through that, but the society debates are going to be complex.
Yeah.
So that was my thoughts.
I've heard the moon is an option for that.
We're getting there. No, but I well said. And, I think, there's going to continue to be amazing advancements in science and stuff that I hope will sort of offset, what we've been talking about from that perspective. I think, coming off of an event like this, and, as you look ahead to other events, and I even reflect a little bit on CES from a couple months ago, right? Where, how do you take some of this, some of the most compelling, interesting new capabilities out there, like was introduced this week around brand intelligence. I think our job is to go take those, build some amazing sort of demos around them, and really then show clients how to take advantage of it. So what I take away from an event like this is, hey, how do we harness some of this new capability and then show our customers, not just talk about it, but show our customers how they could take advantage of it, and blend that in, an AI-based operating model, blend that in with an ecosystem of, Agentics, looking at from, data as a foundation to the platforms and the intelligence of those platforms, to then how you have this agentic layer that then operates across those, to then having an interface layer, and all wrapped with, people, right? All of it has to be managed and run by people. So to answer your question, I think, we'll have some to-dos coming out of here on how we could take some of the amazing things that were announced this week and then begin to show our clients how to help them use that, and show some of the brands like how this helps advance them, and really tie that back into some of our unique offerings.
Yeah. Well, Todd, first off, thank you so much for taking the time early here this morning for the Pure Signal podcast. It's been great getting to know you from CES. We got to spend some time together, and then finally got you locked in to join the Pure Signal podcast. And hopefully down the road, we can meet back up with you and hear how things are going, and pick your brain some more, because I think there's plenty that we left on the table for that. But no, just really, really, really appreciate you taking the time and joining us.
Thanks, Ryan. Appreciate it. It was, I know we bounced around a bunch of topics, but thank you. And it's an honor to be here.
Todd Schwarz, our global digital platform lead, for myself, Ryan, for Kevin, and for Todd. This has been another edition of the Pure Signal podcast, reminding you to what, Kevin? I'll do it. Be bold and be curious. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you soon.